Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather on February 18th now, 2018. I'm Dave Percy, and meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first on the weather or hazardous weather graphic, we've got warnings, winter storm and blizzard warnings continuing. Not as widespread as yesterday from St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, on up into the Selawik-Kobuk Valley areas, including Kotzebue, and out along the coast there, Kivalina on up toward Point Hope. Winter storm warning up through this area for up to 10 inches of snow, and that warning is out for right now through Tuesday afternoon, through 6 p.m. Tuesday afternoon. Looking for an additional 10 inches of snow here, especially on the upslope areas of the mountains, and a little bit less here back toward the Seward Peninsula. But then from the Bering Strait coast to St. Lawrence Island, that's a blizzard warning out through at least tomorrow, tonight and tomorrow, for blizzard conditions, near occasional blizzard conditions. That's a quarter mile or less visibility in gusty winds as high as 35 to 40 miles an hour or more, with additional snowfall, and that possibly even could create whiteout conditions. Not as bad here across the Yukon Delta, eastern Norton Sound, in toward the greater Galena area. Winter weather advisory for those locations. Possible freezing rain here in the interior, back down along the coast. Otherwise, look for some more snow and gusty winds, reducing visibilities there as well. Otherwise, no warnings out. Eastern interior, southern Alaska, North Slope Arctic coast, and even the southeast coast. Warning, advisory, and watch free. So moving on to the satellite imagery, you can see the first band of moisture here, first front from the northwest coast, or the western Arctic coast, northwest interior, back down into the Gulf. Actually, the frontal boundary would be right in through here, but this weakening as it comes across, but producing a little, some scattered areas of light snow across south central Alaska today, and areas of back up through the interior, kind of a narrowing band of that as it pushes eastward here. Pretty gusty winds up ahead of the front, especially in the northwest there, anywhere 40, 50 miles per hour. And then a break behind that coming in across the southwest interior on up into St. Lawrence Island. Haven't obviously not into the blizzard conditions yet there, but you can see the clouds just to your south with a big system down here to the west-southwest. And it's pretty fair seeing gusts over 70, 75 miles an hour at AKwx during the day today. Was that front approach. Actually, it was earlier today, late last night, early this morning, had those winds gusts over 75 miles an hour, 75 to 80 there across the central Aleutians, and front real close to the area there, winds diminishing this afternoon. Main low center back to the west-southwest there, and then lots of moisture surging northward here, high pressure holding, although this feature rotating through the ridge, and that's weakened it quite a bit, and that's why not much of precipitation fell out of it, especially south of the Alaska Range here. Is mostly back up to the northwest, and that front also had a weakening effect on the ridge, but it's going to redevelop, and this is going to continue northward, south to north flow. Warm air will continue to surge northward across central eastern Bering Sea for tonight, tomorrow, and probably even tomorrow night, as that next center, quite an intense center, moves northward. Otherwise, over the southeast coast, not too bad. Another nice day there with pretty good sunshine, although higher clouds spreading into the northern areas. Mid and high level clouds, eastern Copper River Basin in the Tanana Valley, and back to the northwest there, kind of Las Cirrus there from the eastern Arctic coast down toward Dawson in the Yukon. And of course, all the sunshine here down across the Dixon Entrance area. And rolling this once again, you can see another kind of a wave developing down in this area. That's going to scoot northward tonight. So they got to look for another round of strong winds to move into the AKwx and AKwx area as that thing develops. It's just sort of on the, just off the graphic there, or off the picture, right in this area, another development. That's going to be moving north with the center moving west of Adak Island. So that's a perfect setup for another round of strong winds for those areas. On the chart today, there's the first low center, the main one here, 964 millibars. Actually looking at this trough right through here, that will be swinging around as this continues northward. You had the strong winds today and the rain ahead of the frontal system here, the main frontal boundary there, kind of diminishing during the afternoon on Sunday, but as that trough rotates up, look for another round of the strong winds. Otherwise, this weakening system coming into the interior, mostly rain along the coast into Kodiak Island, toward Bristol Bay, and then they get into a mixed situation, mostly snow back to the northwest there, and pretty good winds, again, gusting quite strongly, we're from 35 to 50 miles an hour up ahead of this frontal boundary on out toward the western Arctic coast, northwest coastal areas. And then some following showers, a little milder conditions, definitely above freezing here behind the front. Surge of warmer air. So you had mixed precipitation, scattered showers, tapering off and ending along the coast there. And then the high clouds surging northward there, almost again up to St. Lawrence Island. And the rain has yet to reach the Pribilof Islands as of early afternoon on Sunday, but definitely will here shortly by Sunday evening, should be into the area there, especially as the front continues eastward. Tonight's position almost right across St. Paul and St. George, down across Nikolsky. Southern portion weakening, so you end up with a trailing edge of this intense frontal boundary here coming across the eastern Aleutians. Strong low center lifting northward here in this trough, swinging around. That's going to bring another round of strong winds, as I mentioned, into the central Aleutians tonight. It'll be quite windy even back out toward the west, toward Chimney and Attu, and very windy here across all of the Bering Sea, right up in toward St. Lawrence Island, and winds increasing along the southwest coast. But for the most part, precipitation staying near or west of the area here along the coast, at least through most of tonight. Otherwise, just some scattered flurries and showers over the interior. Scattered snow showers, this boundary continuing to weaken. Still looking for a zone of continuous light snow here from, roughly the Brooks Range northwest along the front there out toward the central Arctic coast. And snow showers, light snow showers or flurries here with this much weakened portion here over the eastern interior 40-mile country down in toward the Wrangell Mountains. And then a weak low develops along that boundary just to the west-southwest, currently developing right now, and that tracks northeastward. That brings an increasing chance of precipitation to the north coast of the Panhandle later tonight and toward tomorrow morning. Just a chance here along the North Gulf Coast. Better chance for Yakutat. I've seen some snow becoming mixed rain and snow, and then just a gradual increase in the clouds over the Panhandle with continued light winds. And then for tomorrow, this actually slides southeastward here. Northerly flow continuing aloft, and that's going to push this mostly off to the southeast. So now you have a chance of rain or snow showers, or just snow showers here along the south, central, and south outer coastline. Dry back up to the north there. High pressure, 1,032 millibars, holds here over the Copper River Basin, actually the eastern Alaska range there. North of the mountains, look for some lingering clouds and flurries there from Nebezhne Northway, possibly even the Tanana Valley, but that'll be lifting north. And then a good shot of wind and rain, or precipitation again, coming in with this system. Narrow band of rain along the front here from the Yukon Delta southward to the Alaska Peninsula, and quite windy, as you can see, a lot of lines on the map here. Strong southwest winds turn southerly with warm air pushing northward into the southern Chukchi Sea. Old frontal boundary lifting out to the northeast here still keeps a lingering chance of snow along the eastern Arctic coast into the late afternoon hours. Otherwise, a very dry and back to the VFR flying here over much of southern Alaska on into the northern southeast coast. Lots of rain showers here from the Pribilofs up towards St. Lawrence Island, becoming snow showers back in the colder air out to the west there, but that's mostly north of the western Aleutians. And then for Tuesday, that low continues to track northeastward here. That trough axis swings around and really thumps the northwest coastal areas there, St. Lawrence Island, on up into the Kivalina, Noatak Valley areas. Look for winds possible gusting over 50 miles an hour with snow that will result in blowing snow, reduced visibilities there. Of course, the warnings, winter storm warning out for that area through Tuesday afternoon, up to 10 inches of snow with that on the southern slopes of the western Alaska Range, or Brooks Range, I'm sorry. Scattered snow showers over the Tanana Valley on down north of the Alaska Range. South of the mountains, though, high pressure keeping it mostly sunny over southern Alaska and dry, maybe some snow showers around the Denali Park area. The next system bringing wind and rain back into just about all the Aleutian chain there from Shemya eastward with this warm front. Look for freezing conditions, increasing chances of rain here for much of the Alaska Peninsula, but staying dry and variably cloudy for Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and the southeast coast. A few clouds here over the central and northern areas, do mostly sunny in the south and light winds. Looking at the low temperatures for tonight, 20s for the Panhandle, near 0 over the eastern interior, and highs into the mid-40s there for Alaska for Monday afternoon. Next night, down into the single numbers to a little below 0 on the east side, much milder again, 20s to near 30 here to above freezing over the Alaska Peninsula. And then the highs for Tuesday afternoon, a little warmer there over the eastern interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, the first graphic here shows quite an area of IFR having moved inland to the interior from Bristol Bay here right up to the southern slopes of the Brooks Range, back eastward there across the Noatak Valley, Kivalina, and those areas. Area of VFR here for the north slope, and marginal VFR over much of the eastern southeast interior early on, and then the next frontal boundary out here weakening as it moves eastward, but still a band of IFR with that coming in toward the eastern Aleutians with marginal conditions on out to the west. Southeast coast, not too bad, some marginal VFR on the north side there, back along the coast of the North Gulf Coast into the Kenai Peninsula and across south central Alaska. Then by tomorrow afternoon, seeing quite an improvement here, going VFR probably very early in the morning, breaking out to VFR, if not late tonight, here for the much of south and south central and southeast Alaska, south and along the Alaska Range there, but back to the west, that next system pushing in. Big area of IFR now spreading in Togiak Bay, northward there across Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Norton Sound to the Nulato Hills, back up into the Bering Strait, and just some scattered areas, this area dissipating here, but still some IFR, southern slopes of the central western Brooks Range. And this area of VFR lifting northward tomorrow, probably will hang on to much of the Brooks Range VFR flying through the afternoon. Panhandle now, marginal VFR in the southern part. For the Tuesday morning outlook, VFR here across the southeast coast, southeast interior up into the central eastern Tanana Valley areas, then back into the IFR again along and south of the Brooks Range, VFR on the north side, and an area of IFR here, Bristol Bay in the southwest interior with marginal stuff up to Kodiak Island. And the Aleutians not too bad, Bering Sea, just a narrow band of marginal VFR out there, catching the Unalaska Island area, the Alaska Peninsula, but looking really good out over the Bering Sea. And for the Tuesday outlook, pretty good here, continues. A lot of VFR out over the northern central Bering Sea, but big batch of IFR now slipping on up to the Aleutians there from about, east of Atka, back out to just west of Shemya and Attu with VFR for the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. Some marginal VFR here along and west of the Alaska Range. And again, linking up with that area of IFR in the southern Brooks Range. Passes looking like this. Anaktuvik, good VFR tomorrow. Starting out marginal for both Anaktuvik and Adigan. Look for marginal VFR early and then maybe late with that area, that zone of VFR shifting through middle part of the day. Otherwise, Lake Clark and Merrill, good VFR flying for those passes, as well as rainy, windy, Mentesta, Isabel, VFR. And for Tanita, good VFR. Looks good also for Portage, VFR flying through that pass. Chilkoot and White, VFR, possible marginal VFR on both northern approaches there throughout probably the entire day. And for freezing levels, 10,000 feet here up to Southwest Gulf, east of Kodiak Island, 8,000 feet. Quite a gradient right along the North Gulf Coast here with that ridging shifting eastward a little bit there. And then another zone here with those strong southerly winds pulling warm air all the way up to this Bering Strait, actually 2,000 feet just south of the strait, 6,000 feet right over St. Lawrence Island, and then cooler air sliding in over the western Bering and Aleutians. Icing weakening front, as I mentioned, coming eastward here in just a weak trailing edge of possible light icing down across the Alaska Peninsula. A little more extensive up here to the north and northwest from the Yukon Delta. There could be some areas of considerable moderate rime that extends on up to the northwest coast through the Bering Strait. Bulk of the moisture out to the west and northwest, just catching the far western Aleutians. Icing free over the interior, spotty stuff up here over the northeast, and then this stuff, possible mixed icing there for the southeast coast, mainly down to the south, and those chances diminish throughout the afternoon. Jet stream, strong ridge right up through interior Alaska, strong northerly jet here, right along the border, in across the panhandle, 110 knots coming right down out of the Arctic, and then southerlies here on the other side of the ridge, 110 to 130 knots, with the trough just to the west there. 70-knot winds here, 60 to 70-knot winds over the Bering Sea right up to the Bering Strait, 40 to 45, dropping back to 35 western interior, 20 to 25 elsewhere. And at 3,000 feet, strongest winds here right through the western interior Seward Peninsula, 65 to 70 knots over the Bering Sea, lighter under the ridge axis. Turbulence-wise, pretty smooth here, eastern interior and the Panhandle. Widespread moderate chop here. Western Brooks Range southward to Bristol Bay and all along the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Dehne and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by AKwx to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Dehne's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that they could that would be easier to travel with, you know, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state.
Which you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy. And it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer. Computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these two-dimensional topo lines and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper, but Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math, in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like fly paper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis continues to show melting and retreating sea ice conditions out here over the northern Bering Sea on down along the southwest coast. And those continued southerly winds, which another round will be coming up here over the next day or so, will continue that trend of melting back the sea ice out through here. Moving on to the coastal water forecast for the Panhandle tomorrow, not too bad. Variable winds, 10 to 15 on the south coast, to mostly easterly at 10 to 15 on the central to north coast, up around to the, swinging back around to the north at 10, up to 15 for northern Lynn Canal, northeast 15 for Clarence or Stevens Passage, light winds for Clarence straight out of the southeast. And then for Tuesday, a little more uniform wind pattern showing up. Westerlies 15 to 20 on the north coast, northwest 15 on the south coast, seas at about 6 feet. Pretty good there. And light winds over the inside waters of 10 knots, except northern Lynn Canal, northerly breeze at 15. Prince William Sound, northwest at 15 for tomorrow. North for the eastern North Gulf Coast at 15. Light winds here at 10 knots, but still small craft advisories from the Barrens all along the North Gulf Coast due to the 8-foot seas. And Kachemak Bay, north at 15, north 20 for southern Cook Inlet. Outlook for Tuesday, all of Cook Inlet should have a north wind at 10 knots with 2-foot seas, but westerlies up to 25 for Kachemak Bay. That'll blow right across the Barren Islands, fall back to about 20 knots for the western North Gulf Coast and continue to diminish here over toward Middleton Island. Light northwest winds about 15 for Prince William Sound, just 2-foot seas. Kodiak Island, light winds tomorrow, 10 knots or less, 2 to 9-foot seas. And Sitkinak to Castle Cape becoming south and starting to pick up and only up to 15. Small craft advisories from Castle Cape to Cape Sarachef for 25-knot winds, but big difference on the other side of the peninsula. Full gale there, south 40, 8-foot seas, east 20 for Bristol Bay, seas 5 feet. Outlook for Tuesday, east-southeast winds 20 to 25 for the peninsula, lighter northeast 15, Bristol Bay, and southwest of Kodiak west at 15, otherwise west-southwest 15. Shelikof Strait along eastern Kodiak Island. And for the Fox Islands tomorrow, west-south winds 30 to 40 on Alaska Island, and then 30 to 40 knots from the southwest here. Pick up over Adak and Atka, 35 to 45 knots. And those 45-knot winds, just sustained winds, just under storm force, extend all the way out to Shemya with seas 25 to 30 feet out there and anywhere from 20 to 25 near the central Aleutians. And then for Tuesday, east-northeast, northeasterly gales for the far western zone out there and 16-foot seas and a stiff east to southeast breeze here along the central Aleutian areas and 30 to 35 knots from the southeast for the Fox Islands. Southwest coast tomorrow, strong winds here. Southeast, 40 to 45 knots, strongest north of Nunivak Island. There are seas 12 to 14 feet. 40-knot winds for the Pribilofs right out of the south, 23-foot seas there. 31-foot seas for the St. Matthew Island zone, with south winds sustained at 55 knots, south 40 for St. Lawrence Island. And then those turn southwest, still 40 knots though for Tuesday there for St. Lawrence Island, and gales down to north coast of Nunivak Island. And south, though, much lighter, south of 20, southeast 20 for the Pribilofs, still hanging in there, 45-knot wind out of the southwest, 30-foot seas for St. Matthew Island. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, southeast to southwest winds at about 10 knots, pick it up to 15. Central coast, brisk wind advisories on the west side. Cape Beaufort, all the way down to Wales, southeast winds, 40 knots. And then for the Tuesday outlook, south to southeast winds, 40 knots, not only from Wales to Cape Beaufort, but also the western coast here, but northeast of Point Lay, dropping off to 25 from the south. So brisk wind advisories through the central and eastern coast on Tuesday there as they become more westerly as you head toward Demarcation Point. Outlook tonight, this weakening system brings chance of snow, clouds here over the eastern interior down to the Wrangell Mountains. A little more continuous area light snow as the front hangs together up there to the north. Another round of strong winds coming into the central Aleutians with this trough here as the low center lifts northward. Front otherwise weakens as it pushes eastward toward the Fox Islands, but strong winds, northern Bering Sea here in advance of this front again, more calmer over the interior. And then we'll see for tomorrow that front really weakens here, especially in its southern portion. Just a narrow band of rain, a lot less wind, but winter storm warnings out St. Lawrence Island northwestward into the Chukchi Sea areas in the northwest coast through Tuesday afternoon as that trough moves to the northeast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.